Диви, ебать. Ох, нихуя себе волна, ебать.
Лена, а что это?
Well, hello, that's me again. Today is November 9th, 2025. It is Sunday, it is morning in Seattle, and it's probably, midday somewhere else, or somewhere it's most likely in Europe is the evening. But I will not make this one today very long because there is not much to discuss in terms of juicy details, and I do not want it to make it in very much intellectual, if you wish, for people to have their brains, being just boiling over some mathematical military concepts and operational planning. No, it's fine. I want to address one thing, which is, of course, oh yeah, there are all kinds of people. Make no mistake, we have to be aware of the fact that, for example, around my blog and my Smoothie X12 channel in YouTube, we have all kinds of people, including some people who do not wish me well, and they will pick on anything which I misspeak, and again, listen, I have the official excuse for that. I'm Russian. I mean, my vernacular is good enough, but when I record videos, and what you just basically viewing is all this, it's not improv. I cannot say it's improv. I do have plan. I know what points I will discuss or what points I will just simply narrate or read. But yeah, sometimes I misspeak, and it's natural for just majority of people because I'm not a classic lecturer, and so people try to correct me, which is correct. I mean, I admit this was me misspeaking. So about not maneuverable but maneuver warfare, and I agree the proper way to say it is maneuver warfare, but it's just one of those things which have to be kind of giving me a little bit of break. You know what I mean. Not that, again, I'm not pretending to be the news anchor or somebody who possesses exquisite, narration, exquisite speech, and pronunciation and things of this nature. So kind of tolerate it a little bit with me, and that's the thing. So now we can go and good Lord, we can go back to square one. And I don't know how many times I have to repeat it, but as I already stated, Russian leaders, top military political top in Russia, they are in the business repeating things over and over again, because obviously it's not even directed to, well, most of Western political top is downright imbeciles, but they also have to articulate this point of view to even Western public, which Russians do not want to kill Westerners. If anybody thinks that Russians are just sitting and dreaming that invading Europe, for example, Russians do not want to do that at all. But, and here's Mr. Lavrov, who, according to some British, obviously, which is the old line sacks of excrement, that's the only type of people who work there, stated that he was sidelined by Vladimir Putin. Well, those people are basically pulling that out of those news, so to speak, out of their behinds in order for them to fill their space with some kind of narration against the background of catastrophe for the armed forces of Ukraine. And we'll speak about it today. But look at this, going to Sergei Viktorovich Lavrov. This is Lavrov repeating this today, yet again. Same old, same old. Look at this. November 9, Moscow. So, and he talks to RIA News, and again, do not forget, Russians know what Russian military political top thinks about this whole situation, and they accept it. That is why Vladimir Putin has extraordinarily high rates of approval, between 78 to 80 something plus percent by different polling organizations. But here is Lavrov, and he calls the conditions for ending the conflict in Ukraine. The end of the conflict in Ukraine is impossible without eradicating its root causes and taking into account Russia's interest. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in an interview with RIA Novosti. The end of the conflict, in our opinion, is impossible without taking into account Russia's interest and eradicating its root causes. You may ask how many times. In this particular instance, it has to be repeated virtually every day, especially for those people in Washington, in Brussels, in London, who still think that they somehow can go and coerce Russia to do something. They can't. They don't have levers at all. I mean, Mr. Trump can think, well, we know now he also by the end of the year, evidently, he's going to pay down those $38 trillion of national debt somehow. I don't know. But yeah, that's what we've been promised. But they have to understand, you cannot, just run with your bare forehead into the stone, the boulder, which is, I don't know, several hundred tons, and expect it to move. Russians make this, patently clear. It's just absolutely non-negotiable. And the negotiable NATO, get the hell out of Russia's backyard. Simple as that. If not, you will be destroyed. And this is what is happening. So, and you saw already what is happening in terms of their energy or power generation in whatever is left in Ukraine, and even they admit that now essentially the whole thing, the grid and the energy production is beginning to affect the whole of country, whatever is left of this country. And the only reason, which I'm not specialist in grid, make no mistake, I'm not specialist in power generating processes, and I understand basic things about how turbines work, how they produce electricity and things of this nature, but nothing more than that. I mean, I know how electricity works on the ships, for example, but civilian infrastructure and power generation is very different, obviously, on the scale of the country, which used to be 52 million population. And here's the trick. The power generating capacity of Ukraine has been designed from even considering the fact that whatever they touch, they ruin it. But it was basically heritage of the Soviet Union, and it was designed to support the livelihood of country with the 52 million. Obviously, the Ukraine today is not 52 million, not even close. Most likely, the population of Ukraine right now varies between 19 to maybe 22, 23 million, maybe 25 at the most. So as the result, they have the excessive capacity, obviously, and as the result, it takes time to take it out. But now we can see finally this result, as I showed you. For example, from the military thought, военная мысль, how you operate with the systems which are in the foundation of the support of the, for example, war, but it also applies itself equally to civilian sector, if you wish, and in this particular case, to the power generation of, electricity, essentially, And so, as the result, we can see the accumulated effect of it, and obviously, it looks rather spectacular, as you saw yourself in Kharkov and other cities, Poltava, Chernigov, and Kiev itself. Kiev itself is just basically a dark place now. And even the main people be conscious from the central network of the grid of power generating of Ukraine. They admitted that now we essentially down. And that will continue, and they said that's another 3 or 4 type of strikes like what happened 2 days ago, and Ukraine will have no power generating capacity whatsoever. That's the point. We talk about civilization. Of course, civilization is the cultural thing. The civilization is the culture writ large, and it's all about behavioral patterns. That's what constitutes culture. That's what constitutes civilization. But civilization also, in equal measure, if not more, Marxists would say that it is more because it's the foundation, the basis, so to speak, are those productive forces. And productive forces produce what we all love: internet, cars, the electricity, things which are the central heating or what have you, plumbing and things like that. And suddenly what you see is Ukraine being taken down back into the 19th century. Simple as that. The Russians have been patient long enough, but it looks like this is what is happening. Russians are not going to tolerate this terrorism from NATO because Ukraine is NATO, essentially manifestation in the Eastern Europe, and results, as you can see yourself, are all over the place, including obviously Russians continuing to do what they, a few days back, even the Germany's own cadre terrorist and Nazi, Julian Röpke, and it was 5 days ago, I believe. Yeah, it was 5 days ago. He's already, Russian invasion forces captured around 85% of Pokrovsk with no signs of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. Somebody has to explain to Julian Röpke what counteroffensive and counterattacks are. What is counteroffensive, which is the operation. And operations are conducted by the appropriate tactical, operational, and operational level forces, be them division, corps, and things like that. Offensive, no, Ukraine cannot do the offensive anymore. It can do counterattack, and they were trying to do them. It is called the mid storms or mid attacks, because no matter what they do, and as Mr. Julian Röpke laments already 5 days ago, here we can take a look at, for example, Kupiansk. If you take a look at the map of Kupiansk, yes, you see those blue arrows, so to speak. They try to attack this, bottleneck essentially, and where, well, 7 brigades are trapped in Kupiansk on the southern part of it. But what can I say? These are counter attacks in the tactical level force. Okay, they may throw in company here and there. They may even throw the battalion. It's gonna end up, as you all saw from the get-go of the special military operation, that it's mid storms basically. All of them are turned into the ground meat, as Maria Zakharova stated that Zelensky's favorite toy during his childhood was a meat grinder. This is exactly what is happening. So they try and they get killed. Russians do not move. And fact is, they advanced ahead. And if we take a look now at Mirnograd, what is happening in Mirnograd, which is of course part of the Pokrovsk, which is being mopped up finally, and which Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, or Krasnoarmeysk, Mirnograd agglomeration. There is another bunch of the several thousand of Ukrainian troops are trapped now in Mirnograd, and the only way they can survive is just, leaving this on feet, and it's not going, it's not looking good for them, because they all either killed or taken prisoners. So this is how Russians address what Mr. Lavrov talks about, the root causes, that by killing all this, NATO force. Simple as that. And if you take a look at the tally today, as you can see yourself, it's about 13, it's 1,330 killed and wounded. So the slight decrease in the this number of casualties for Ukraine is very simple, because obviously now many of them are surrendering, and there are ample evidence, video evidence of them being taken prisoners. And of course, as you might expect, all of them, those soldiers of armed forces of Ukraine, they all say that, oh yeah, we have been just cooks, the people working in the some kind of bureaucratic capacity, all drivers. No, but yeah, we just poor guys have been coerced. Well, Russians don't buy this anymore, and the algorithm of the dealing with those people, like I don't know, by now it's probably 90 something plus what is called mopped up. Across is fully under control of Russian forces, but they are mopping up those buildings. Literally, you read those reports and you say, oh, okay, yesterday we, pardon me, mopped up or cleared like 64 buildings or 35 and things like that. So because obviously they are sitting out now primarily in those cellars and basements and what have you, hiding behind the backs of whatever the civilians are left there. So yeah, it's the done deal there, and well, you have to go and literally clean or mop up everything what's left there. It's like disinfection. So, but yes, intensity in this case of the basically battles is getting lower. Let's put it this way, and it's only natural. Well, you know what? It's tactics and operational art 101, and that is why you get a little bit fewer people killed on the Ukrainian side. And now, because obviously many people are aware of what is going on, we have suddenly the change of heart. And again, this change of heart by all those stupid NATO bureaucrats, and most of them are stupid, believe me. They are good only on basically making those grandiose statements about all kinds of the capacities of NATO. But look at this. Jens Stoltenberg, the former NATO's big honcho, and he says, NATO won't risk war with Russia over Ukraine. Former bloc chief says, okay, sure, you can't. And it was the right decision not to send Western troops to assist Kiev. Jens Stoltenberg has insisted NATO will not send troops to Ukraine as it could lead to a direct clash with Russia. The bloc former Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has said Russian President Vladimir Putin warned in September, and he was warning it from the start of the special military operation, that Moscow would consider any unauthorized Western military personnel in Ukraine as legitimate targets. The dragging of Ukraine into NATO was one of the causes of the conflict between Moscow and Kiev, he stressed. But Jens Stoltenberg, obviously, here is the trick with those statements, and I mean those grandiose statements, is that each statement which is done or made by all kinds of people, like from NATO top, and we'll talk about German top, about something, it kind of implies that NATO has agency and it has the capacity and do something like send troops. It doesn't. Even the United States doesn't have enough troops, let alone the properly basically trained and properly equipped to go and deploy there and try to change the outcome. It can't. It will be annihilated. And this is the whole other story, because even basically advantage that United States has, and United States has advantage over Russian army in terms of ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, because American satellite grouping is it's the largest in the world, and the United States does have the capacity to see things until somebody begins to shoot back. But even that, they cannot leverage that much. And as I showed last time with the latest article in the Military Thought, it speaks about precisely how you have to operate with this situation when Russians have the advantage across the board, with the exception of the ISR and command and control because of that. And so it's about basically destroying the system, not some objects, but the system as a whole, and it has to be attacked like this. So, and when that is precisely the thing which they are trying to hide behind this rhetoric, that they have agency, that it's actually somehow it's the choice of NATO not to send troops, obviously covering up fact that NATO cannot send troops. It doesn't have resources to fight real war, including together with the United States. Not that it cannot obviously cause some problems, of course it can, make no mistake. And my analogy with arquebus or musket from 16th century is pretty apt here, because even those ancient weapons, they can still kill you. They cannot kill Russia if they fight conventionally, but that's always the problem with the West, which is being covered up. That the West is conventionally so weak that, obviously headed by the United States, that the United States is inevitably nuclear-biased nation, because once it begins to lose, which it will under any kind of conditions in the Eastern Europe, if it decides to really try Russian army, so it will escalate immediately to the nuclear threshold. That's the only thing. That's the kind of mad cow disease, if you wish, with the United States. And for example, Russian military political top has to constantly consider it. But then, of course, there is Germany, and you know what? Yeah, Bundeswehr, oh, for crying out loud. So we have this guy. First, we have the Washington Post. Oh, look at this. Oh, yeah, Germany Graf defense minister aims to make his country war ready. And it was yesterday on the 8th. And as you can see yourself, German defense minister Boris Pistorius must reckon with his center-left party anti-militarism. Really? And the countries need to defend Europe against Russian aggression. First, Germany is in no position to defend, well, essentially anybody, including itself. But here we are. We still have this, clown. Basically, that's who he is. He talks a lot. He talks out of his behind primarily, as most German politicians do. But Boris Pistorius, the German defense minister, is a social democrat in a government led by conservatives, and the man now responsible for revamping and expanding the armed forces in the country that has been allergic to militarization for 80 years since instigation of two world wars. Well, what can I say? I am on record. Germany is done as the country, and it's spiraling into oblivion. And as economic minister Reich, she stated that, Germany ceased to exist to be a competitive economy. And same applies to, military-industrial complex of Germany, which literally cannot produce much on its own. They cannot produce on their own real planes. They cannot produce on good tanks. I mean, if anybody will sell me this BS about the Leopard being the good tank, it's not. And so you look across, they can produce some minuscule quantities of some weapons. It's not serious military force, and that is why when you have people like this, you just have to scratch your head. And I cannot avoid posting those things and discussing those things like NATO to deploy 800,000 troops in case of war with Russia. German general. They do grow damn stupid in Bundeswehr and in Germany. Look at him. The guy looks like a moron, honestly. Berlin is prepared for a war with Moscow and stands ready to facilitate the deployment of 800,000 NATO troops towards the Russian border. Well, you can deploy, obviously, anything towards the Russian border, but then again, I already gave the definition of the threatened or threatening period, and it's Germany is at the mercy of how Russians will view this, because they may decide that it's threatening period, and they're not gonna be going against these troops. They can, and they will annihilate them. And somebody has to explain to this Lieutenant General Alexander Soil-Frank. But Berlin will be turned into the parking lot together with every, military and political leader they have there. Simple as that. If he doesn't understand how wars fought, and if he thinks that Germany can go against Russia, I have a bridge to sell this moron. And Bundeswehr is not a serious military force. It cannot become one. They can recruit number of the people, make no mistake. And as you can see yourself, the hypothetical deployment is it is hypothetical. It's part of the operations plan Germany, which was revealed last year. The 1,000-page long document governs Berlin response to Article 5. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. But he writes that, according to Sol-Frank, the plan may be implemented sooner rather than later. Russia possesses a very large military potential despite the war in Ukraine. Well, at least some realism, finally. He told an annual Bundeswehr conference in Berlin on Friday, adding that Russia is already capable of launching a limited attack on NATO territory. Well, Russia have been always ready to really launch an attack if, of course, Russia would have been threatened. But somebody has to explain, take out every single Bundeswehr officer from all their military academies, from all their whatever they had the position in the general staff of Germany, whatever the names of those things, from Luftwaffe, and put them in the front of the whiteboard and explain to them how Russians will fight Germany in particular, and that Germany will cease to exist as the country within 48 hours if it continues to pretend that it can deploy together with NATO 800,000 troops towards Russia's border. Russia can defeat NATO conventionally. But in this particular case, as already experience showed, which is good experience. I mean, another matter, they don't learn anything from it because they're stupid. But the truth is, Russians will not risk the soldiers' lives in this case. No. Does Mr. Trump want to exchange New York for some Russian city? No. But will Russia deal with the issue in the most dramatic manner if it comes down to it? Absolutely. Why would Russians, waste soldiers' lives when you can actually, basically turn Berlin into the parking lot? Together with everybody who sits there and produces these idiotic ideas. Could Russians go in Berlin now again? Yes, they can. Why? To do what? That's the whole thing. And that's the issue which they still do not understand, and they do not want to accept it as the reality. You cannot explain to moron that he's moron because he's moron. The only thing they know is this basically vicious algorithm of NATO BS, and pretending that somehow Europe wants to fight. No, Europe wants to fight Russia. They just don't have resources, and they will continue to whip themselves into this hysteria. And that is why I am on record. Russia is done with Europe. Iron Curtain, and let Europe go and rot, which it will inevitably finish the rotting, basically scale, if you wish, or phase when it's, you will not be able to salvage it. And so what can I say? You cannot go and fight Russia, pretend that you want to fight Russia. You will be annihilated, period. And you have zero means to stop it. You have to explain to those people from those general staffs, and especially in the NATO headquarters in Brussels. And they have a fixed coordinates, and you don't even have to use the nuclear weapons. Number of Oreshnik salvos will settle the issue once and for all. And this is what I wanted to tell you today on this Sunday. And it's a little bit shorter today because you know what, you know where to go, where to look for the latest developments, for example, at the front lines, which are inexorably moved to the west. And other than that, so what can I say? As always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford, please support me, on Patreon, or buy me a coffee too. And have nice rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.